I'm Georgia and this is The Sound of Georgia. We're back with the third installment in my Sound of Fictionalisation video series. Fourth video overall, but third installment. I hope today doesn't come off as too offensive, or worse than that, sad. But we're going to be talking about the children today. And there's not a lot to work with, sadly. Just as an extra little point, it's Angela Cartwright's birthday today, so happy birthday, Brigitte. Anyway, before we kick off with the limited amount of information we have about the children, let's talk about the real children. We all know there were 7 of them, so I don't need to tell you that, even though I just did. And they were the children of Captain Georg von Trapp and Agatha Whitehead. And if you want to hear more about that, go check the last video. In age order, they were Rupert, Agatha, Maria, Werner, Hedwig, Johanna and Martina. Rupert was born in 1911. He was a doctor. He got married twice. He had 6 children and then died in 1992. Agatha was born in 1913. After the family stopped singing, she ran a kindergarten with one of her very close friends. She never married and she died in 2010. Maria, little Maria that is, was born in 1914. After the family stopped singing, she worked alongside Maria, that being her stepmother Maria, and her brother Johann as a missionary. Like Agatha, she never married, and she died in 2014, a few months shy of her 100th birthday. Remember, her health problems were the reason Maria came to the family in the first place. Werner was born in 1915. Like his older brother, he had 6 children with his wife. He died in 2007. Hedwig was born in 1917. She worked as a teacher and then died in 1972 because of her asthma. Johanna was born in 1919. She ended up moving back to Austria and lived there until she died in 1994. And then Martina was born in 1921. She was married in 1949 and 2 years later in 1951 she died tragically from complications during childbirth when she was only 30. The baby didn't make it either. Now, you may have noticed a huge part of what I just told you revolved around when these people died. I did not mention that information in the previous 2 videos, even though Maria and the captain are very much dead. And I think that sets a very good precedent, showing, sadly, just how underdeveloped the children are as characters. I've said it before, they function far more as a single unit than they are 7 individual characters. And as far as the adaptations go, their personalities are about as standard as you can get. Let's look at Sound of Music as a bit of an example. With Liesl, her entire character is that she's 16. 16 and in love, and 16 and no longer a child. The 2 biggest parts of her character, that she is the oldest and that she's the secondary romance, both tie back to the fact that she is 16. That's her entire character. Friedrich is the oldest boy. Louisa is the stubborn one and the mastermind behind the pranks. Kurt is kind of cheeky, I guess. I guess I could say that he's always hungry, but really that's fanfiction. Pouncing on 2 singular lines in one scene to give him a bit more character. Because as for the story exclusively, he's goofy and that's about it. Brigitte is smart. Marta is little. Gretel is little too. In the movie she's kind of stubborn, but that's more to do with Kimmy's portrayal of her than the actual character. Starstorm Animation made one of those in a nutshell videos of Sound of Music, and I will leave it linked down below because it is hilarious. In it the children are each described in 1 sentence. And Kurt's description is actually completely meta. It's talking about the high note he hits in So Long Farewell. Fun fact, that was actually Charmian's, Liesl's, younger sister who sang that note. It wasn't Dwayne. Heck, in the stage version of Sound of Music, we don't even learn how old Gretel is. So there you go. When you really get down to it, those are the characteristics of each of the children in Sound of Music. And sadly, the same logic can be applied to the other 2 adaptations. Even in the anime, with several episodes devoted to the antics of one particular child, all of which are completely disposable to the overall story. We don't get a lot more than the very basic of characteristics. Hedwig, who is the oldest girl in this adaptation, is stubborn and closed off. So, Louisa. Little Marie is very sweet, and Martina loves her teddy bear. I can't remember much more. Rupert does go to medical school in the anime, as much as a 14-year-old can do that. But that's just from a storytelling standpoint. All it means is that he's missing in action for a few episodes. Point in the reality's favour story-wise, but it doesn't give him any more personality. I can't think of a single noticeable moment from any of the children in the German film. Like, at all. Even in the memoir, Maria doesn't talk about the children too much individually. The big consistency across the adaptations is that they are children. In reality, by the time the Anschluss happened and the family decided they needed to flee, Maria and the captain had already been married for 10 years. In all the adaptations, we have huge time compression. Except in that one. But we're not talking about that one because it's a completely different story. It's Agatha's story, actually. And honestly, I can't remember too much about the children in that one either. I made a whole video about it and how I think it is the most accurate adaptation of the Von Trapp story and the least accurate at the same time. Being Agatha's story, she's definitely got a lot more personality than we find her having in these. But everything she does in the movie is entirely fictional. And the rest of the children are, sadly, as underdeveloped as they've ever been. Getting back to adaptations of Maria's story, the time is compressed so that the story starts at the earliest in 1936, rather than in 1926, which was when it really started. So in the adaptations, by the time the Anschluss happens, they are all still children. In reality, at the time, Martina was 17, Maria's two daughters were 9 and 7 respectively, and she was pregnant with Johann. Rodgers and Hammerstein axed Maria's children completely. In the German film, we see the baby in a couple of scenes, and it's specified that he is a he. If I'm remembering correctly, his name's not mentioned, though I think it might be mentioned in the sequel. When they dubbed the films, they tacked on a bit of Die Trapp family in America to the original film. And I think he's mentioned by name there. So obviously it's Johann. But we only see him in a few scenes. And then in the anime, we get one still image at the very end. Rodgers and Hammerstein actually weren't the only ones to play around with names and birth order for the children. They did it more than any of the other adaptations, but to me that just makes the other adaptations make even less sense. Given that the second oldest daughter's name was Maria, changing her to Louisa makes sense. There's a reason I call her Little Maria all the time. Changing her to Louisa makes sense, and it was pretty clearly a case of change one, change them all. So Friedrich replaced Rupert and Agatha became Liesl and so on. But the changes in the German film and the anime make even less sense because they're not like that. In the German film, they're all exactly the same until you get to the second youngest daughter. In reality, that was Joanna. In the film, her name's Rosemary, which was the name of one of the Von Trapp children, Maria's oldest daughter, not one of the original 7. The anime only plays with the order. As I said earlier, in that version, Hedwig is the oldest girl, while in reality she was smack bang in the middle, and Agatha, who was the oldest daughter in reality, is now the youngest. I've only got half a page of notes left, and we've barely talked about what they actually do in all the adaptations. And that is because they do everything together. Like running off the governesses. In the stage version of Sound of Music, one of the captain's first lines is whether the last governess left because Louisa was playing tricks on her. And then in Act 2, before Maria arrives back, he asks Louisa the exact same thing. In the movie, Maria doesn't bond quite as quickly with the children as she does on stage, so they still prank her with the frog and the pine cone. On stage they never try any pranks because Do Re Mi follows immediately after they've all been introduced. And there's no dinner scene. The anime also has the angle of the children as troublemakers. It talks about the fact that there usually was more than one governess at any given time, and they ended up turning against each other, which is why the family has been through so many of them. This is something directly taken from the memoir. And then once Maria arrives, there's a little scene where they all get together and explicitly plot about how they're going to get rid of her. In the German film, along with what Maria says in her memoir, they come off as far more restless than mischievous. Obviously, it would have been a lot more complicated in reality. Again, look at Life of Music. Agatha's relationship with Maria in that movie is very different than the one they have in any of the adaptations of Maria's memoir. I can't tell you much more about the real children than I have already, but they were real people, so there was a lot more to them than we see. In the adaptations, falling in love with Maria is really the only character arc they get. For the most part, the children are exactly that. The children. One single character in 7 parts. I really want there to be more to them than there is, but when you actually really get down and look at it really close, there's not much to them. They're just the children. And that's everything for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video and are still continuing to enjoy the series. Let me know in the comments which is your favourite child. Mine personally is Friedrich. And no, it's not because I've met Nicholas Hammond. I hope you guys are all staying safe. Feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in my video next week. So long, farewell!